Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. We're staying with this Palisades fire all night. We're getting more live images in, and they are just not letting up. My goodness. This is something that we don't see often in Los Angeles proper, which is fires that are hopping structure to structure. It's not uncommon for us to see wildfires, of course, in Southern California. A lot of times we do see brush fires that are moving through mountainous areas. They're being fueled by dry brush. But we're seeing this skip from house to house, structure to structure. The images that have been coming through all night have been sickening. And once the sun comes up, we'll perhaps get a clearer image of what exactly we're dealing with here. We have David Acuña standing by. He's with CAL FIRE. David, we've of course been talking about the Palisades fire. I'm also hearing of something happening in Altadena now as well. What do people need to know?
So we have another fast-moving brush fire just east of Altadena called the Eaton Fire. It is a unified command with both Los Angeles County as well as the Angeles National Forest. This fire is moving so fast that evacuation orders haven't yet had time to populate, but they are incoming. And we need people to evacuate their homes if and when they are ordered as quickly as possible, particularly in the areas where there is narrow drive access.
So, same advice that we've been hearing all day. Wind is what's fueling these things. It's a similar scenario out near Altadena, I'm assuming.
It is exactly the same scenario. The winds are affecting the entire region from Ventura all the way down to San Diego. And so everyone needs to be very cautious. And I do want to mention that when the reporter mentioned that somebody ran back in for a picture of their deceased mother, which I completely empathize with, I understand. But that is an incredibly hazardous action to take. I cannot stress enough how much we need people to, once they evacuate, stay evacuated. It is incredibly dangerous out here, and that fire is moving much too fast.
I also need to point out, too, that we've been talking about Pacific Palisades region. Altadena, where this other fire that you're talking about, this is not in the exact same vicinity. Altadena is in a completely different part of Southern California. It's about roughly 35 miles east, I believe, up near Pasadena area. I got to ask you, though, so when we talk about embers going from one place to another, starting a whole nother fire, we're talking about a distance between Altadena and the Pacific Palisades, roughly 35 miles. Can embers be carried that far, or could this have been a complete, unique situation that started off on its own?
No, so the wind is traveling from northeast to southwest, so it is a completely different fire.
Wow. When we talk about these images that we're seeing on our screen here, and I'll take them in full, you've seen massive fire after massive fire over the years. What's your reaction when you see the carnage that we're watching in the Palisades region tonight?
We have recently transitioned to referring to what we used to call a fire season into a fire year. We were present with a fire on December 31st, and here we are now with a series of fires in the very first week of January. So it truly is a fire year anymore, between climate change and the location of homes close to the areas where wildfires can and do start, plus just the timing of the Santa Ana winds, and up in the central and northern California area, they have other winds with other names, but the same principle.
We've been watching footage from earlier today. I'm playing back something from earlier today. We saw that there were some cars that had to be moved out of the way in order for fire crews to get to where they needed to get to in order to do their jobs. Are scenes like this a common occurrence?
I wouldn't say common. You can imagine that in this area, it's very population dense with a very narrow infrastructure for being able to exit. As you can see, even though there's a relatively small number of cars, it is a very narrow area in that small space. And so once a couple of cars get stuck, there's just no getting out of there, driving anyways.
Right. And so ultimately what it does is it blocks up these essential thoroughfares. And sadly, these large trucks, oftentimes, these are huge vehicles that are needed to get up into these areas to fight these fires. I got to ask you, as the night progresses and as we enter the early morning hours here, what are you going to be watching out for?
Well, we have information from the National Weather Service that these conditions are actually going to worsen overnight, not lighten up. Traditionally, you would see higher humidities, lower winds in the evenings and early mornings. That is not going to happen. We are going to have these extreme winds through at least Wednesday, continuing into Thursday, potentially tapering on Friday. So this is the beginning of a very long 3 days for our CAL FIRE crews, the local fire department crews, the federal crews, everyone that's here protecting homes and lives. Going to be very busy for the next few days.
How does this operation work? How do agencies communicate with each other? How do they tackle this thing when there's so many cooks in the kitchen?
Well, fortunately, we have a very well integrated system where there is one incident commander, and that incident commander makes the decisions on how what the priorities are. In the case of the Palisades fire, the first priority for quite a while was just getting people out of the way. The life safety is the most important part. We want to save homes, we want to save vehicles, but getting people out of the way is the most important part. Right now, we are in unified command with Los Angeles County, Los Angeles City, CAL FIRE, Los Angeles PD, and Los Angeles Sheriffs. And in the morning, our CAL FIRE incident management team will continue to work with Los Angeles County, Los Angeles City to mitigate and set the correct operational guidelines and steps to take to protect as many homes and people as possible.
I was asking your colleague Jesse Torres about this earlier this evening. Talk to me about the geography that we're working with here in the Palisades. This is a stretch of Southern California. It's hills. It's in between Malibu and Santa Monica. What about the geography in this region makes fighting this fire so challenging?
So, there are three things that cause fires to grow: fuel, wind, and topography. Well, fuel, when you look at homes that have, if they have not done their proper defensible space clearance, which varies by jurisdiction, that can be very dangerous. The wind, as we've already discussed, is extremely fast right now. And the topography, meaning that there's hills, both as the wind blows them down slope as well as back up slope. All of those conditions lead to very rapid fire growth.
What's more dangerous, I suppose? If somebody is on top, I remember when I was out in the field reporting on these things, I was once told that you need to be especially careful when you're on top of a hill, because fires can climb up hills way quicker than you think they might. Is that something that people should watch out for if they are in these more hilly areas?
Well, the first thing to say is that if they're in an area with an evacuation order, they need to leave the area, particularly as the video we saw earlier where the roads were clogged rather quickly. They need to get out of the area earlier than later. So when an evacuation warning comes up, that is the time to leave the area because it's so difficult to leave. However, I wouldn't recommend getting to the top of a hill, bottom of a hill. With these erratic winds, and as you know, the topography of the Palisades undulates up and down many different times through multiple canyons, and it's all dangerous. They just need to leave the area.
All right, we are looking at Matthew Seedorf from Fox 11 saying, devastation all around. I've lost count of the number of buildings we've seen on fire. This is Radcliffe Avenue in Pacific Palisades, California. Before we go here, I got to ask you, what message do you have for folks that live in the area, folks who have friends or family that live in the area? What messages do they need to hear tonight at this hour?
Well, there's two important things. First of all, as we've already discussed, if they are subject to an evacuation warning, or particularly an order, they need to leave the area, get somewhere safe. If you navigate to fire.ca.gov, you'll find the latest evacuation warnings, the evacuation orders, and the shelters that are set up. However, for the entire Southern California area, subject to these wind conditions for the next few days, please keep a close eye on fire.ca.gov, which includes not only evacuation warnings, evacuation orders, but if you navigate to readyforwildfire.org, we also have on planning to evacuate what you need to plan for, particularly pets and livestock, because they cannot move themselves.
David Acuña with CAL FIRE. We appreciate your time. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.